Let us spend some time with today's readings. By way of introduction, we are created in the image of God. What is in us, thinking, language, prayer, speech, all of them are called to reflect God, to mirror God's own nature. So we should look upon our faculties as ones which are related to God, which are rooted in God's love, and in it our actions are included. So this view of the image of God in us is a call to see our faculties, speech, thinking, love, emotions, not as something self-contained, but which always has a link to God's life. As it were, symbolically, part of our speech, part of our thinking, part of our emotions, part of our love, part of our charitable actions have a mirror part in God, are rooted in God. Consequently, when we speak, when we pray, when we act, we share our nature with God. And when we are aware of this link, when we use our speech for something in the service of God, when we use our actions, our thoughts, our emotions in the service of God and others, then we receive life. That is why in our first reading from St. Paul's letter to the Corinthians, in chapter 11, Paul wants to correct that particular community's Eucharistic practice. He reproves them that they don't wait for one another. They have their own separate meals and drinks before they start celebrating the Eucharist, the Lord's Supper, together. So Paul calls for the correction of their practices, precisely for this, because part of our speech, part of our thinking, part of our emotions are to be dedicated to God. And what we see in today's Gospel, when Jesus heals the centurion servant, is something very interesting and connected to this. Jesus is healing the centurion servant because the centurion loved the Jewish people. Part of his actions, part of his speech, part of his emotions were dedicated to serving the people, even if it was an occupied territory by the Romans. So Jesus, we could say, simply recognizes this link and responds to this goodness in the centurion, who dedicates part of his life to the well-being of the people. That's why even the Jewish elders say that he deserved this of you, because he is friendly towards our people. And we could draw a practical conclusion. Why is it so important to recognize that part of us is shared with God's nature? Because when we recognize these shared, as it were, divine faculties, part of us which is totally compatible with God, when we recognize these faculties linked to God, rooted in God, in individuals and in peoples, in nations, in different cultures, then we would tremendously enhance our sense of peace and our desire for peace, through which we can overcome wars even before it is born.